Today, we're going to start off on what I believe is one of the most impactful books I've ever read in my entire life, being Psycho-Cybernetics, written by Maxwell Maltz. And I am going to talk through and add my commentary as it comes to mind as I read this through chapter by chapter. This was written in 1960, and today is Saturday, January 4th, 2025. So that's 65 years ago. This book was written, and it's transformed my entire life and way of thinking. And if you do a little Googling, a little research on the internet, you will probably find interviews with some of the most successful people of the world, people you know, like, and trust and look up to, companies that you buy from. These people may have read this or have recommended this at least once in somewhere in their life or speaking or reference thereof. Amazing book. And we're going to dive right in. Essentially, this is going to be a read chapter at a time, chapter by chapter. And if I feel impressed to stop and comment, I will. Otherwise, I might just read the whole thing because it's incredible. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, this is going to be Psycho-Cybernetics, and I'm reading the preface. It's before chapter 1. Okay. The secret of using this book to change your life. Discovery of the self-image represents a breakthrough in psychology and the field of creative personality. The significance of the self-image has only been recognized for more than a decade, so basically since 1950. That's for reference. Yet there's been little written about it. Curiously enough, this is not because self image psychology hasn't worked, but because it's worked so amazingly well. As one of my colleagues expressed it, I'm reluctant to publish my findings, especially for the lay public, because if I presented some of my case histories and described the rather amazing and spectacular improvements in personality, I would be accused of exaggerating or trying to start a cult or both. End quote. I too felt the same sort of reluctance. Any book I might write on the subject would be sure to be regarded as somewhat unorthodox, by some of my colleagues for several reasons. In the first place, it's somewhat unorthodox for a plastic surgeon to write a book on psychology. I mean, this is a plastic surgeon writing one of the most important books in history, with the rear view mirror lens looking backwards, right? In the second place, it'll probably be regarded in some quarters as even more unorthodox to go outside the tight little dogma, the closed system of the science of psychology, and seek answers concerning human behavior in the fields of, check this out now, not just psychology. He's saying in the fields of physics, anatomy, and the new science of cybernetics. My answer is that any good plastic surgeon is and must be a psychologist, whether he would have it so or not have it so. When you change a man's face, you almost invariably change his future. Wow, that's powerful. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, with one of the largest populations of female breast augmentation in the nation. There's a lot of plastic surgeons here. There has to be, right? And how many of them actually think about the human psychology? I mean, a lot of influencers online, they're going to a said plastic surgeon here, getting famous and looking amazing. But those are influencers that are already um, perceiving themselves as beautiful, and enhancing their image would give them more popularity and famedom and money and all those things. They may be already prepared for it. It may be easier. I'm sure they talk a little bit about that. It's probably obviously more in the forefront. But how many of the mommies, tummy tuck and mommy makeovers are actually getting this prep, this human psychology prep talk from their surgeon who understands? Let me read it again. My answer is that any good plastic surgeon is and must be a psychologist, whether he would have it so or not. When you change a man's face, you almost invariably change his future, change his physical image, and nearly always you change the man, his personality, his behavior, and sometimes even his basic talents and abilities. Whoa, this is huge. Now, you could be 75 years old, such as individuals I won't reference names now because they don't come to mind and I'm doing this live. You'd be 75 years old, you get plastic surgery, let's say, as he's proposing here, you change your facial image, you change your self-image from the facial image reconstruct. And by changing your physical image, it nearly always comes with a personality or behavior change. In this case, even your new talents and new abilities, you're doing different things. You're thinking different thoughts, which lead to different actions, and different actions and with different outcomes. These different outcomes become these newly trained personality traits. They become part of your character. They become part of who you are just by thinking differently. And it all came from the self-image, came from the way you look in the mirror was ultimately changing that. And that was the core responsibility as a surgeon that Maxwell Maltz is calling out is so necessary. Now, the next segment, beauty is more than skin deep. A plastic surgeon doesn't simply alter a man's face, he alters the man inner self. The incisions he makes are more than skin deep. They frequently cut deep into the psyche as well. I decided a long time ago that this is an awesome responsibility and that I owe it to my patients and to myself to know something about what I'm doing. No responsible MD would attempt to perform extensive plastic surgery without specialized knowledge and training. Just so, I feel that if changing a man's face is going to change the inner man as well, I have a responsibility to acquire specialized knowledge in that field also. Wow, that's huge. Failures that led to success. In a previous book written some 20 years ago, New Faces, New Futures, I published a more or less collection of case histories where surgery and particularly facial plastic surgery had opened the door to a new life for many people. That book told of the amazing changes that often occur quite suddenly and dramatically in a person's personality when you change his face. Interesting. Change his face, changes personality. I was elated at my successes in this respect, but like Sir Humphrey Davy, I learned more from my failures than from my successes. Some patients showed no change in personality after surgery. In most cases, a person who'd conspicuously ugly face or some quote freakish feature corrected by surgery experienced on almost immediate, usually within 21 days, rise in self-esteem. So you're thinking like the Hunchback of Notre Dame gets a plastic surgery makeover in less than 3 weeks. He's a different man. Self confidence. And in some cases, though, the patient continued to feel inadequate and experienced feelings of inferiority. In short, these quote failures continued to feel, act, and behave, parenthesis, just as if they'd still had an ugly face. Wow, that's very interesting. Even though he's made them beautiful, they didn't believe they were beautiful on the outside, or obviously it manifested, translated to the inside. The inside belief is what drove the thought. The thought drove the actions, and the actions came the outcome. This guy didn't change whatsoever. Wow. This indicated to me that reconstruction of the physical image itself was not the real key to changes in personality. There was something else which was usually influenced by facial surgery, but sometimes not. When this something else was reconstructed, the person himself changed. When this something else was not reconstructed, the person himself remained the same, although his physical features might be radically different. The face of personality. It was as if personality itself had a face. Interesting. What if it did? This non physical face of personality, quote, seemed to be the real key to personality change. So if it remained scarred, distorted, or ugly, even inferior, the person himself acted out this role in his behavior regardless of the changes in physical appearance, like I was saying. If this face of personality, well, if it could be reconstructed, if old emotional scars could be removed, then the person himself changed, even without facial plastic surgery. Even if the outside remains the same, if the inside, the belief and the thoughts are changed, here we are. Now we see the person himself changed, even without facial plastic surgery. Once I began to explore this area, I found more and more phenomena which confirm the fact that the quote self image, the individual's mental and spiritual concept or quote picture of himself, was the real key to personality and behavior. More about this in the first chapter. Truth is where you find it. I've always believed in going wherever it may be necessary to find truth, even if international boundaries must be crossed. When I decided to become a plastic surgeon years ago, German doctors were far ahead of the rest of the world in this field, so I went to Germany. In my search for the self image, I had also had to cross boundaries, although invisible ones, that although the science of psychology acknowledged the self image and its key role in human behavior, psychology's answer to the questions of how the self image exerts its influence, how it creates a new personality, what happens inside the human nervous system when the self image is changed, was, quote, somehow. Hmm. Not much has changed over 65 years. I'm kidding, partially. I found most of my answers in the new science of cybernetics, which restored teleology as a respectable concept in science. It's rather strange that the new science of cybernetics grew out of the work of physicists and mathematicians rather than that of psychologists, especially when it was understood that cybernetics had to do with teleology, goal striving, goal oriented behavior of mechanical systems. Cybernetics explains, quote, what happens and, quote, what is necessary to the purposeful behavior of machines. Psychology, with all of its vaunted knowledge of the human psyche, had no satisfactory answer for such a simple goal oriented, purposeful situation as, for example, how it's possible for a human being to be just picking up a cigarette from a coffee table and place it in his mouth. But the physicist had an answer. The proponents of many psychological theories were somewhat comparable men who speculated as to what was in outer space and on other planets, but couldn't tell what was in their own backyards. Apparently, there's more human brain cells than there are stars in the galaxy, trillions, or at least as many. Crazy. Neurons, brain cells, this stuff is wild. We still don't really fully understand it. 65 years later, this book was written with, I don't know, a decade at least of research in the field. And really, the mind is still as boggling. But what he teaches in this book is still applicable today because it's been applicable since the beginning of time. It's universal and applicable to everyone. But what's really great about this book is there's reading in between the lines of every chapter. You just blow ahead. You don't have to read the book multiple times. Like this book has been well loved. I've had it for 8 years. And I'll say that we're just getting started, but the brain itself is uncharted. Like we're getting closer, But I really hope in my lifetime anyway that we crack the code. If AI or anything can help us understand ourselves better, like he defines it in your own backyard. The proponents of many psychological theories were somewhat comparable men who just speculated as to what was in outer space and other planets, but they couldn't tell what was in their own backyards. The new science of cybernetics made possible an important breakthrough in psychology. I myself take no credit for the breakthrough other than the recognition of it. The fact that this breakthrough came from the work of physicists and mathematicians shouldn't surprise us. I mean, any breakthrough in science is likely to come from outside the system. You see, experts are the most thoroughly familiar with the developed knowledge inside the prescribed boundaries of a given science. So, any new knowledge must usually come from the outside, not from, quote, experts, but from what someone has defined as an inpert. So, Pastor was not an MD. The Wright brothers were not aeronautical engineers, but they were bicycle mechanics. Einstein, properly speaking, he wasn't a physicist or even a mathematician. Yet his findings in mathematics completely turned upside down all the pet theories in physics. Madame Curie wasn't an MD, but a physicist, yet she made important contributions to medical science. How can you use this new knowledge? Well, in this book, I've attempted not only to inform you of this new knowledge from the field of cybernetics, but also to demonstrate how you can use it in your own life to achieve the goals that are important to you. General principles. The self image is the key to human personality and human behavior. Change the self image, and you change the personality and behavior. If you didn't catch that line, rewind and listen to and read it again. But more than this, the self image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. It defines what you can and cannot do. Expand the self image, and you expand the area of the possible. The development of an adequate, realistic self image will seem to imbue the individual with new capabilities, new talents, and literally turn failures into success. I'm going to read this one sentence again. It defines what you can and cannot do. You see, the self image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. What that means is your minimum standard in life, what you allow to tolerate no less than, will become your ceiling. Your floor of tolerance is your ceiling for your self-image and your success. Just imagine, like, if you don't tolerate less than $1,000 in your bank account, well, you'll never drop below $1,000. You don't tolerate it. That's your minimum. You will always have that in abundance, no matter what. You won't think about it. If you feel like $1 million in your bank account tolerance level minimum is just so absurd, well, you'll never achieve that. If you think $10 is absurd, you'll never achieve that. You'll be living at what you tolerate in your life. Your bare minimum, your floor is your actual ceiling in life. So if you want to raise your ceiling, raise your minimum tolerance, raise your floor. Let me say that again. If you want to raise your ceiling of success in life, your dreams, your outcomes, the things that you want the most of, raise your floor of what you tolerate, what your minimum standard in life is. See, my minimum standard after 18 years working professionally as an engineer, 6 years in call centers, three different jobs, and then a year as a sweeper and 3 years cutting grass in my neighborhood and for my grandma. So started working really since I was 12. I'm 41 now. My minimum standard was no longer working for someone else or needing to work for money. On November 11th, 2024, I stepped away and walked away as my job and lived life on my own terms. Now, guess what? I did the math today and I'm approximately negative $275,000 in debt. Before I became an entrepreneur and started my digital business during COVID, guess what? I had $0 in debt. Doing the Amway thing for 5 years in the worldwide organization, it was like my thing to be debt free and living paycheck to paycheck, paying off my balance on my credit cards and not traveling. For 5 years, I didn't travel. I didn't contribute to my 401k. I wasn't saving. and I was blowing lots of money, funneling it into a business model. And after those 5 years, I realized silly to not save, silly to not invest, silly to not do those things, but also silly to believe that I was getting free knowledge. Well, guess what? You get what you pay for. When I found mentors that were actually living the true life that I wanted and wanted to have, and I had to pay for their knowledge, I instantly paid. And now here I am in my personal and business finances, over a quarter of $1 million in debt. Over. I don't have recurring revenue, but yet I've been making money nonstop since I quit my job. I actually made more money. So what happened was I quit my job, and 2 weeks later, they gave me an unexpected full paycheck. And I was like, "Wow, but I made money before that." So if my mind started stressing that, "Oh, I haven't replaced my job income," that was kind of ludicrous. I would never do such a thing. I would never give my wife so much insecurity and feelings of being unstable without having recurring revenue to replace my job income at the bare least. Why would I do such a reckless thing? Well, it wasn't reckless because I had developed skills and had proven to myself in 0 to 90 days, I generated $30,000 a month recurring revenue, selling only a simple $1,000 a month product. Stupid of me to do that. One or $2,000 a month products, they should have been at least 5K, if not 10K a month. I would have attracted better clients, had longer retention, had to work a heck of a lot less for making the same amount, if not more, money than I did by selling 30 clients. But I proved to myself, developed a skill set. Later, as clients started to lose, I developed a product that gave the worst business owner $16,000 in ads converted into $140,000 in 30 days. That skill set allowed me to have confidence to step away from my job on my birthday, my freedom day, which was Veterans Day. It just happens to be Veterans Day every year. Thank you very much for your service, the real veterans. But I'll tell you what, that I stepped out and have been living my dream life ever since. Now I battled with these ideas. What I'm reading this book for, again, is for me and for you, but for me to hear it and to recognize, you know what, that which I focus on will become. Where your focus goes, your energy flows, like Tony Robbins will say. And if I continue to focus on a mountain of debt, minus 275K, and my business Amex was turned off, they reduced instantly my card that had no limit. They said, you now have this minus 15K spending limit. You're over and you're late on your payment. They sent automatic payments to my business banking and took $15,000, $17,000, excuse me, in 1 month that I wasn't expected to pay. I only had about 9,000 that I gave them, and the additional 7K, it went out. It came down to 0 and went negative 4K. And I was like, "Yikes." Luckily, they returned the payment. I went positive net 5K again, and I didn't have to touch any of my personal savings, which I gave myself 90 days minimum of personal savings cash buffer. Obviously, I've got credit card limits in case rainy days came, but that wasn't what happened with Amex. Now Amex was pissed. I was able to negotiate a payment plan, paid everything back so far right now, but the card is still turned off because I've not actually gone below that now clamped spending buffer limit. But all this to say that which I focus on will grow. Every morning, I'm getting paid, new deals, new transactions. I've just been texting a guy before I was on uh, this this video that I'm creating, and this guy has interest to learn about what I'm doing. I'm creating opportunities and making deals and getting paid consistently now within this next 1 month. All of my recurring revenues will kick in. I've not started advertising at all. I've not run paid ads, which is my skill set, my forte. I ran paid ads for myself, for my coaching business in October. I ran them on Google Clicks and Meta ads, and I had a Google PPC Lead that came in, used my chatbot and qualified and talked about it, and it gave amazing response and prompts about giving this person tips on where to go to get jobs and Fiverr and all this stuff to help improve their life for free. And October 22nd, 21st was the last time I heard from them text wise. And I counted, I'd sent them 34 emails, 34 emails until January 2nd. They clicked on my email inside, clicked the link to book a call with me, and self booked a call with me on the 7th of January because my calendar was blocked out. I was in Florida the last week, went there for Christmas Day and returned on the 2nd of January. And I blocked out my calendar until the 7th. So they took my first available slot because I followed up with them. I have a skill set, a very desirable skill set. I haven't even started advertising yet. And all of my growth has been organic. I've been kicking out deals like crazy, working in verticals like home service pros, legal, Amazon FBA, photo booth businesses, and now looking into HVAC, plumbing, electrical, a continuation of the home service pros, which is mostly roofing up here. And six, we're going into healthcare professionals like dentists, plastic surgeons, and health coaches, life fitness coaches, people who are prescribing weight loss and semaglutides. So all of that, this is recent opportunity in the last 1 or 2 months max. I developed an AI voice agent and created demos, and now I've got all these verticals that I've got experience in deals churning and working. Even my coach hired me now as he's my client, and I'm building out, and he's a business and life coach to infopreneurs and um, you know, marketing guys, online people like myself, coaches, and all of these opportunities have come based off of my skill set and knowledge that I built in the past and demonstrated in multiple businesses. Now I've got opportunities like real estate and lots of just multiple income streams. And all came with how I think. And if I focus on that mountain of debt, which will be wiped out instantly, and all I realize is like, hey, babe, to my wife, I now just need to go make hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's no longer the tens of thousands I was saying I needed to make or the thousands that working a job as an engineer would make. I'm like, honey, the thousands are not ever going to be enough. When I have $275,000 of debt at 41 years age that will be gone within this year, I can't rely on a job that pays me thousands and just gets the bills paid. You see what I'm saying? My wife working as a NICU nurse 3 days a month, bringing home 1,500 or so, 2,000 at the most, 400 at the least, zero at the least, to be honest. But that plus a take home of 8,500 bucks with all the insurance and all the junk that I was having scraped off the top. I mean, we're barely talking 10K a month. We've basically made 10K a month since, I don't know, 15 or 17 years straight in general. I mean, we've been growing and making more and more. Okay, it was more, but let's call take home is roughly 10K a month as a job employee person. I had to raise my floor. I raised my ceiling, my earning potential, my dreams, the ability to step away, never, ever again have to update a resume, work for somebody else, or worry about money. Because there's enough money like abundance and air, I never think about it. I never have to think about it anymore. I don't think about my air supply unless I don't have enough of it. So now I no longer think about my money supply because if I don't have enough of it, it's like, I'm running out of money. I have to go to work. And then I drive into the office, spend all of my life, and then come home at the end of the night and I can breathe again because my money supply is good for the time being. But if I stopped working, I stopped earning. There's only so many hours in the day. So no matter how much I made, I was limited in my earnings. So I was both limited and vulnerable in my earning potential. And even as an entrepreneur and someone who owns your own job, or someone who is a servant, or someone who's doing one to one coaching, or anything that consumes your time, you're also both limited and vulnerable. If your business solely depends on you and it can't be duplicated out through systems or people, well, unfortunately, you also have a similar thing to a job. But guess what's great is if you have a very small hinge that swings big doors, or it's called leverage, a lever, it really doesn't matter anymore now, does it? If you're one guy like me who owns and runs his own business and operates, earning six, seven, and now on my way to eight figures this year, we're going to say that a small lever, a hinge, small hinge can swing big doors. And so now it no longer matters if you have 500 times duplicated yourself or through systems. You can actually use things where it's called high ticket sales. You can close a single deal or close a client for 50,000, 100,000, or $1 million, and then have monthly recurring revenues in the six figures or seven figures. And you can also have revenue share or even equity partnership. You can actually own part of companies that you're helping. You're becoming a growth partner. These are small levers that swing big doors. Now, even having at that stage, if it was massive and complex, and you had one or two or five clients, and now you're making eight figures a year, which is $10 million minimum, on average, a million a month. Let's say a million a month to a million a week. If you're making that kind of earning potential, yes, you will almost indefinitely need to hire and will expand at least beyond yourself. And come on, think about it. You go further with others. There's no single horse, Clydesdale horse, that pulled the carriage with more than its own strength. But when he got a partner and there were two Clydesdale horses, they pulled the carriage with the strength of four. You go further with people. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, you go at it with someone else. So even then, what I'm saying, it all comes down to what you think. And that was a long, drawn out rant, but more of documentation of where I'm at currently and proclamation that what I focus on will grow. Where my energy flows, so does the manifestation, and that's where it goes. See, you think about something, it triggers emotions in your body. And even if your body or brain matter doesn't realize the time and space that the event is happening, whether it's in the future, in the past, currently happening, or never ever happened, you've imagined it based off of your past experiences. Well, your actual psyche, the things that are producing the energy waves, your vibrational level will actually raise or lower to match the thing that you're imagining. This is proven and documented in this book. And so, what happens is when you focus on that time and time again, feeling the emotion of it already have happened, not is it going to happen? Oh, please God, one day, or in the future, this thing, I really hope and pray this thing happens. My floor is still remaining the same. But when you believe it's already happened, your floor, your ceiling, they are raised. When you're grateful for having received the thing that's already happened, it's the ultimate form of receivership, being grateful. So, the easiest way to actually imagine something as if it's already happened is just being grateful for the thing have it happened. Being grateful for your goals already being accomplished will already and automatically raise your ceiling and raise your floor, your minimum standard. Your minimum standard, which he's talking about in this book here. The self image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. It defines what you can and cannot do. Expand the self image and you expand the area of the possible. The development of an adequate, realistic self image will seem to imbue the individual with new capabilities, new talents, and literally turn failure into success. Self image psychology hasn't been not only proved on its own merits, but explains many phenomena which have long been known but not properly understood in the past. For example, there's today irrefutable clinical evidence in the fields of individual psychology, psychosomatic medicine, and industrial psychology that there are success type personalities. and failure type personalities, happiness prone personalities, and unhappiness prone personalities, even health prone personalities, and disease prone personalities. Self image psychology. It throws new light on these and many other observable facts of life. It shows and throws new light on the power of positive thinking. Hello. Can you hear this right now, loud and clear? And more importantly, it explains why it works with some individuals and not with others. Positive thinking does not indeed work when it's consistent with the individual's self image. It literally cannot work when it's inconsistent with the self image until the self image has changed. So, in order to understand self image psychology and use it in your own life, you need to know something of the mechanism in which to accomplish the goal. There's an abundance of scientific evidence which shows that the human brain and nervous system operate purposefully in accordance with the known principles of cybernetics to accomplish goals of the individual. Insofar as functions concerned, the brain and nervous system constitute a marvelous and complex goal striving mechanism, a sort of built in automatic guidance system which works for you as a success mechanism. Now, hear this one clear, or against you as a failure mechanism, depending on how big, bold words you, the operator, operate it and goals that you set for it. Now, the challenge that we have as human beings is our mind is default set to focusing on the shit in life, the against you mechanism or failure mechanism, excuse me. Um, so we need to become consciously aware and catch our lows and chase our highs because life has ups and downs, highs and lows. If we have behavior traits and mechanisms, if we start observing those times when things get really bad and also the times when they got really good, and you pay attention to those behavior tripwires, that is where we can minimize the lows and increase and maximize the highs, depending on how you use it, he says. So it's also rather ironic that cybernetics, which began as a study of machines and mechanical principles, it goes far to restore the dignity of man as a unique creative being. Psychology, which began with the study of man's psyche or soul, almost ended by depriving man of his soul. The behaviorist who understood neither the man nor his machine and thereby confused the one with the other, he told us that thought is merely the movement of electrons and the consciousness merely a chemical action. Will and purpose were myths. Cybernetics, which began with the study of physical machines, makes no such mistake. The science of cybernetics, it doesn't tell us that man is a machine, but that man has and uses a machine. Moreover, it tells us how that machine functions and how it can be used. Experiencing is the secret. So the self image is changed far better or worse, not by intellect alone, nor by intellectual knowledge alone, but by experiencing. Interesting. You could sit there and study and think all day about the thing that you want in your life, but actually taking massive imperfect action, which is most missing in America today, this activity, the action actually inspires an experience. You experience. The self image is changed at that point when you experience. To raise your floor, thereby raising your ceiling, you have to experience something in order to change a self image. They're connected and linked in thought and action. You'll act differently if you've gone out into the world, got kicked in the teeth, got up again, and went out and had a victory lap afterwards because you changed. If you think about something, you study on something, you start creating a whole bunch of software automations and workflows, and you got to wrap your head around things and watch 500,000 YouTube videos. And if you do that all day without actually having a use case to experience, you'll never change. You'll never learn. You'll wear yourself out. You won't feel in the flow or experience theta and delta brainwave activity and just be Zen like producing all day, every day, effortlessly in what has been your gifted talents and natural um, skill sets and capabilities that others find very challenging, but you find natural. It'll be hard to come across that level of brainwave activity and output unless you actually do something. I didn't learn how to do AI, software as a service, sales automations, marketing, advertising, or anything in the digital marketing realm. I didn't learn any of it until I had to learn it because I had clients paying me money and yelling at me to fix it because it's broke. My product sucked. They were firing me and calling me abusive names, texting me, emailing me, calling me, all the sorts of boundaryless things that these people of this world did to me. Now, I may have deserved it, but I also set myself up for it. And I didn't have yet the experiences. I didn't know, oh, it's not a great idea that they actually have my phone number. How did they get that? Well, because I called them, I did a discovery call on the phone, I texted them through my chat bots, whatever I did, the wrong way. I did it the wrong way until I learned that I needed to just have Zoom links and do my, if it's the discovery or first or second call close via Google Meet or Zoom and not give them my phone number. If there was a many other list of things that I had to learn through experience, I would have never had to do it. So many people these days are coming to hire me for my skill sets when I was just trying to teach it to them because what I've learned is very hard and complicated and came with more than 2.5 years of learned experience. I didn't just pick this up in a garage or study it on YouTube or, whatever it may be. I paid money for the best knowledge in the world and went out and got my hands dirty, built it for my own self, broke a product, went back and asked for help, and reiterated and tweaked over and over again. Some of it was my own, some of it was someone else's. I put it together and I came up with a product that's still improving, but it's making me lots of money in many different ways now because now I have a valuable skill set and knowledge that people want and to acquire as well. And I've got three different ways in which I give it to you. I either do it all the way for you, I do it with you, look over the shoulder, OTS, or I do it yourself by giving you all the stuff and good luck, go get it done. And I've yet to have a success case come to me with the DIY option, but it's the cheapest option because you do it all yourself. A lot of the stuff I'm giving away for free. Knowledge is free. The internet provides that. Implementation and help you got to pay for. And that's commonplace. When you go to Harvard, you can get a degree three different ways, potentially. If you go to Harvard on site, it's going to cost you a college tuition, I'm sure, at least 50 grand a year. I don't know what it is, but we're talking over 200 up to $250,000. I'm betting it's even higher nowadays just for a 4-year education. That's the done for you solution. You've got college professors and a campus and facilities that cost probably $1 billion at this point, but millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, you can do it online. You basically getting the help with the done with you solution, look over the shoulder in the comfort of your own home. You still pay to get access to the same college professors and all that stuff, but you're doing it at home, you're learning online, you're doing that kind of an education. The third way, do it yourself, is buy the books that the college professors are teaching out of. Teach yourself the skills implement it yourself. Yeah, you can see the difference in the three different opportunities. Same story here. But what happened is this skill set became acquired and now it's become very valuable. And that itself came through experience alone, not just thinking about it. I don't think I could have thought myself into an engineering degree, but I pretty much skated by, passed all the exams, graduated with less than a 3.0, it was a 2.8 or something, less than a B average. But B's get degrees, and so do C's get degrees. And it's kind of where I was hanging out. And the guys who got A's made less money than me. I was smart enough to hang around, stick around, get hired by an actual emerging company in 2006. Intel and Micron had a joint venture. Intel with the cash cow and Micron with the know how came together, got married, and I got hired. That was a pretty sweet deal. I made twice as much in 2006 as my then highest level smarty pants colleagues did. I got lucky. I didn't get lucky by staying and doing the same thing for 18 freaking years, thinking that I would always be making more than my peers and whatever. No, they caught up and surpassed me. People in, the space that I was in could have pivoted easily and made more than what I was making as a really fancy title guy. But guess what? That all came through experience. To labor this nearly to death with a dead horse, the self image is changed for better or worse, not by intellect alone, nor by intellectual knowledge alone, but by experience. Wittingly or unwittingly, you developed your self image by your creative experiencing in the past. You can change it by the same method. It's not the child who's taught about love, but the child who's experienced love that grows into a happy, healthy, and well adjusted adult. Our present state of self confidence and poise is the result of what we've experienced rather than what we've learned intellectually. Self image psychology, it also bridges the gap and resolves apparent conflicts between the various therapeutic methods used today. It furnishes a common denominator for direct and indirect counseling, clinical psychology, psychoanalysts, and also auto suggestion. All in one way or another, use creative experiencing to build a better self image, regardless of theories. This is what really happens. So, for example, in the therapeutic situation employed by the psychoanalytical school, the analyst never criticizes, disapproves, or moralizes, is never shocked as the patient pours out his fears, his shames, his guilt feelings, and his bad thoughts. For perhaps the first time in his life, the patient experiences acceptance as a human being. He feels that his self has some worth and dignity, and he comes to accept himself and to conceive it of himself in new terms. Think about that for a minute. Science discovers synthetic experience. Another discovery, this time in the field of experimental and clinical psychology. It enables us to use experiencing as a direct and controlled method of changing the self image. So, actual real life experience can be a hard and ruthless teacher. Throw a man in water over his head, and the experience may teach him to swim. The same experience, it may cause another man to drown. The army makes a man, quote, out of many young boys. But there's no doubting that army experience, it also makes many psychoneurotics. For centuries, it's been recognized that nothing succeeds like success, but we learn to function successfully by experiencing success. Memories of past successes, well, they act as built in, stored information, giving us self confidence for the present task. But how come a person can draw upon memories of past successful experiences when he's experienced only failure? His plight, it's somewhat comparable to the young man who can't secure a job because he doesn't have any experience, and he can't acquire experience because he can't get a job. That's the common catch 22, ain't it, y'all? The dilemma was solved by another important discovery, which, for all practical purposes, allows us to synthesize experience, to literally create experience and control it in a laboratory of our minds. Experimental and clinical psychologists, they've proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt that the human nervous system cannot tell the difference between an actual experience and an experience imagined vividly and in detail. Although this may appear to be a rather extravagant statement, in this book, we'll examine some controlled laboratory experiments where this type of quote synthetic experience has been used in very practical ways to improve skill in dart throwing and shooting basketball goals. We'll see it at work and we'll see it in the lives of individuals who've used it to improve their skill in public speaking, overcoming fear, and even more importantly, the dentist, the overcome the fear of the dentist, excuse me, developing social poise, developing self confidence, selling more goods, more stuff, becoming more proficient in chess, and in practically every other conceivable type of situation or quote experience is recognized to bring success. We'll take a look at an amazing experiment in which two prominent doctors arranged things so that neurotics could experience quote normally and thereby cured them. Perhaps most important of all, we'll learn how chronically unhappy people have learned to enjoy life by experiencing happiness. The secret of using this book to change your life. Here it is. This book has been designed not merely to be read out, but to be experienced. You can acquire information from reading a book, but to quote experience, you must creatively respond to information. Acquiring information itself is passive, experiencing is active. When you experience something, something inside you happens to your nervous system and your midbrain. New engrams and neural patterns are recorded in the gray matter of your brain. This book has been designed to this book has been designed this book has been designed to force you literally to experience tailor-made, prefabricated quote, case histories have been kept intentionally to a minimum. Instead, you're asked to furnish your own case histories by exercising imagination and memory. I've not supplied summaries at the end of each chapter. Instead, you're asked to jot down the most important points which appeal to you as key points, which should be remembered. You'll digest the information in this book better if you do your own analysis and summation of the chapters. Finally, you'll find throughout the book certain things to do and certain practice exercises which you're asked to perform. These exercises are simple and they're easy to perform, but they must be done regularly if you are to derive maximum benefit from them. So, I encourage you and myself, I myself will be actually filling out these. Um, they're not templates, but they're at the back of each chapter. If I go to, I mean, I have scribble scratch written down here, um, in most of these chapters. And as I'm looking through it in my book, he just described that he's going to have questions. There we go. I saw one. He's going to ask us questions, points to remember and fill in. So I have under how to unlock your real personality for me is on page 209. It's a points to remember and fill in. Yeah, it's looking like to be at the back of each chapter. I didn't see it in every chapter, but maybe I'm just blasting through. But I recommend not just me filling this out, but to you to get a notepad, book, and pen. And at the end of each chapter, where I've got an option to have notes to fill out and fill in for me to be remembering, I recommend you do the same thing because I'm going to do it. You should do it. I should do it. We're running a science experiment here. We're seeing if this book can help us change our lives for the better, really, like the way that we want them to be, rather than our lives changing anyway, regardless if we want it to or not. And we end up getting a life that we don't want because we focus on the thing, oftentimes on the thing that we don't want repeatedly over and over again. They become behavior traits and patterns and character flaws. I call them flaws because they're not traits that we want or personality. Um, yeah, character personality traits that bring us desirable results. The things that we want, they're the things we don't want. So they're flaws. But here's the thing, we're going to try this out, and I recommend you doing that as well. So, on words, reserve judgment for 21 days. So, for 3 weeks. Do not allow yourself to become discouraged if nothing seems to happen when you set about practicing the various techniques outlined in this book for changing your self image. Instead, reserve judgment and just go on practicing. Develop a habit. Just keep doing at it over and over again, day in, day out, long enough that you start to see results. Pick up and compound. Now, do this for a minimum period of 21 days. It usually requires a minimum of about 21 days to affect any perceptible change in a mental image. Following plastic surgery takes about 21 days for the average patient to get used to his new face. When an arm or leg is amputated, the phantom limb persists for about 21 days, and people must live in a new house for about 3 weeks before it begins to seem like home. These and many other commonly observed phenomena tend to show it that it requires a minimum of about 21 days for an old mental image to dissolve and a new one to gel. Therefore, you will derive more benefit from this book if you'll just secure your own consent to reserve critical judgment for at least 3 weeks. During this time, do not be continually looking over your shoulder, so to speak, or trying to measure your progress. During these 21 days, do not argue intellectually with the ideas presented. Do not debate with yourself as to whether they will work or not. Perform the exercises. Even if they seem impractical to you, persist in playing your new role. In thinking of yourself in new terms, even if you seem to yourself to be somewhat hypocritical in doing so, and even if the new self image feels a little uncomfortable or unnatural, you can neither prove nor disprove with intellectual argument the ideas and concepts described in this book, or simply just by talking about them. You can prove them to yourself by doing them and judging results for yourself. I'm only asking that you reserve critical judgment and analytical argument for a simple 21 days so that you'll give yourself a fair chance to prove or disprove the validity in your own life. We're running a science experiment here after all. We need to be able to get some evidence and prove to ourselves, convincing ourselves that what we're doing is actually working. You got to give it some time, give it some experience. I said that for a reason. The building of an adequate self image is something that shouldn't continue throughout a lifetime, but should continue throughout your lifetime. Admittedly, you can't accomplish a lifetime of growth in 3 weeks' time, but you can experience improvement within 3 weeks' time, and sometimes improvement's quite dramatic. It doesn't actually take a lot of time to make a significant change. When you collapse time and space in the quantum, not the observable matter imparting itself upon another matter, moving matter through time and space, there's no imperceivable time. All things exist in the here and now, in the past, present, future, always will be. So you can actually tap into that and make radical changes rather quickly, but we haven't spoken about that yet. That's just a side note. What is success? Since I use the words success and successful throughout this book, I think it's important at the outset that I define those terms. As I use it, success has nothing to do with prestige symbols, but with creative accomplishment. Rightly speaking, no man should attempt to be a success, but every man can and should be attempting to be successful. Trying to be a success in terms of acquiring prestige symbols and wearing certain badges, well, it leads to neuroticism and frustration and unhappiness. Striving to be successful, however, brings not only material success, but satisfaction, fulfillment, and happiness. Hmm. Noah Webster defines success as the satisfactory accomplishment of a goal sought for. Creative striving for a goal that's important to you as a result of your own deep felt needs, aspirations, and talents, and not the symbols which the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses, expect you to display, bring happiness as well as success. Here's why. Because you will be functioning as you were meant to function, as you were meant to function, meaning it's natural. Man is by nature a goal striving being. And because man is built that way, quote, he's not happy unless he's functioning as he was made to function as a goal striver. So even if you don't think you're driven by goals, it's probably just because you haven't thought about them for a while. Think about an example. My wife will be thinking about the next trip. So when we're on the current trip, she's enjoying it to the point of the trip nearly ending, as she's got something to look forward to, a goal at which she's striving for. She gets excited, she's happy, and starts talking about it. If we don't have a trip yet planned, one will need to be planned because it's a goal worth striving for. And that's what we are inherently designed. This is what's natural. Thus, true success and true happiness not only go together, but each enhances the other. And that, my friends, is the end of the preface to Psycho-Cybernetics. We'll pick up the next chapter, chapter 1, tomorrow. I'm going to be reading a chapter a day, and there's a total of 15 chapters. We just went through today what could be considered chapter 1, the preface, but it's day 1. We'll get through potentially 15 more days later, day 16. We said we're going to go 21 days. I'd like to go 30 days. If we double that, if we can read this in 15 days, great. If it takes 30, great. If it gets done in 15 days, I may either continue on and speak for the next 15 days, describing my experience and describing the goals at which I'm writing down and the thought activities it's asking me to do here and what's happening in my life. Or who knows, we may read it yet again. It's so good that it may even be worth going through one more time, more briefly, or having less or different commentary. We'll see how this plays out. But for now, my friends, that's all. Until the next chapter.